found another picture of the building while I was looking through my archives this morning. That is an old car. So I don't know what the date on this would be, right? But in my archives, man, I found a file of some history that I had taken from an internet search. I found out that a doctor from Tennessee moved to my hometown in, quote, the early 1900s and built in the early 1900s the first unit. And then apparently in 1908, the whole building, that first building, was completed. That second building that was built in 1910, the rectangle building, the property wouldn't have looked as bad as it did if that flat roof building hadn't been built and degraded over the years and started collapsing and looking like bad. The rest of the property would not have been perceived the way it was, I don't think. Without that other large ass building, you know, this place wouldn't have been a very effective hospital for very long, okay, because it would have been a pretty small building. I gotta acknowledge that back in the day is when the problem started. So that middle building that I lived in that they fabricated out of like this open section right here, probably pretty much like one of the newest parts of that whole entire property, but that shit was haunted, dude. And I've been looking back thinking like a lot of the places, a lot of the locations of this building where some of the craziest shit went down were in these areas that had been walled in or had previously been like a porch or some kind of outside area, right? Like, just part of me wonders if the ghosts were pissed off or something that those changes had been made to their nice courtyard and then they got walled into this freaky fucking apartment thing. I was thinking about my parents' bedroom, the room that the floor disintegrated in. Maybe this doctor guy who built the hospital, maybe he built like that area first to like live in or something. Like, I fucking don't know, but I was remembering, dude, that the archway doorway, because like what was the deal with that? Why was it an archway? This archway doorway that led from this my parents' bedroom into the office area, like it was a very thick wall. The main doorway to the bedroom, like from the hall, from the side door area in that little room, that beyond that door, like you'd open the door and there was like this big deep wall. It was a big deep wall. It was inset, like really thick, man. It was giving that this room was like at one time like its own fucking building, and then they just like cut through the side of the building to make a doorway. That would be such a small freaking structure. It's like, why would they build such a big building around like a small structure? Why would they even include that small structure? You know what I mean? I just think maybe that was like an original part of this building that he started building in the early 1900s. And you know what else I was thinking about last night, man? I was thinking about the basement, right? Where I showed you where the main doors were, that I think was my bathroom wall. And that one entrance to the basement that was right there. I don't have any photos of this because that basement was creepier than hell, okay? And I don't think I went down there but a handful of times in my entire time that I lived there, and you wouldn't have either. But if I recall correctly, dude, the basement stairway went down, right? And there was a wall right beside it. And then it opened up on the left into, you know, a sizable area. In no way was that a comprehensive footprint of the house. It was like that basement area was like only a small part of the left side of the house. That was the morgue, and there were elevators back there, which I don't even know, like, I never saw these elevators, but because they were like back beyond this like creepy ass fucking veil of darkness that literally like no one in their right fucking mind's going back there because basements are creepy enough. At the basement ceiling, okay, when you got down the stairs at the basement ceiling, dude, it seems like it was at the ceiling of the basement where this was a fucking crawl space. Like, I don't even know. It was very, not very big. Like, this access to this crawl space, dude. And the crawl space went back the length of the rest of the house. Okay. And I know this because one, because the electrical box was at the other side of the house, right? And my dad was like trying to do some electrical work or something, man. And he had to drill a hole in the floor and feed some shit either up or down through the floor, okay? And my brother was like maybe 15 at the time, but he was a little bit smaller than my dad, right? So he could more easily get in that crawl space. But my dad was under there too. Okay, they were both fucking under there, dude. And I think my brother was like low-key traumatized by having been under there, because I remember listening to him through the floor at a certain point under this crawl space, and he was freaking out. He was like, "Oh my God, I'm stuck." He was he was having a panic attack under there, which any fucking buddy would, and there ain't no amount of money you could pay me to crawl up under a tiny ass crawl space under the floor of a building that had been a fucking hospital for like 100 years. You couldn't fucking pay me, and you couldn't. And so I feel bad for him, because, you know, to this day, because I think he like was traumatized by that, dude. I'm serious, like for real, for real. Like imagine, dude, fuck that noise, fuck that noise. And from what I know, they like never went back under there again. Not because that, you know, if they had some kind of experience beyond just being creepier than hell and scary, for normal reasons, but they just, I think that was it. I don't think they ever went back under there. My dad never had to do any type of work that made him have to go back under there, you know. And so, but what I don't know is if that crawl space also went this way to cover the rest of the footprint of the house, right? Because the reason that I'm bringing this up is that front room that I showed you with the floors that like sloped upward, right? That room was elevated. Why? Why was that room elevated? How was it even elevated? What was under that? What was under that elevated front room? There's just so much mystery surrounding like how this building was set up and laid out, and what it originally was laid out as, and what changes they made to it. What did they block off? Did they block off like an entire other basement? Or was there just not one? When I was looking through my archives, I found some interesting pictures that I'll show you, but I found files, the oldest one dating back to 2014, where I had written some things. I conceived of this idea for the story, okay? I've got so much to tell you, dude. But I conceived of this idea for the story not very long after the building burnt, but I just, you know, it just took time for me to even get started on it, but apparently I was working on it in 2014, which makes me feel better because at least I was doing something, but then I dropped the ball from like 2017 on to now, which is a fucking hot minute that I just can't, Annie, my God. But everything's got to be for a reason, okay? I just got to look at it that way. I was once in your shoes. I remember the first few times I witnessed expiration. They call death expiration, okay? I'll explain. Of course, you never really get used to it, but I assure you it does become easier in time. You'll see. Expiration, expired, okay? That's what they called people dying in the dead files. There was a lot of things left in the building when they abandoned it. It would be like a box full of, you know, manila file folders, and you would, you know, open it up and there would be the log of a patient, you know, a file of a patient. And it would have the date and what they came in for, you know, to the hospital for, their diagnosis, and then it would be a date entry, and it would say expired. And in a lot of these files, there was also accompanying that, there would be these super long strips of paper, looked like, you know, receipt paper or something, but it was a little bit thinner, not as wide, and it was good quality paper. But there would just be this huge long ribbon of paper, and it was a heart monitor. So you'd see the heartbeat, right, throughout this big long ribbon of paper, and then it would flatline, and it was like they tore it off you know, wrote expired in the file and like rolled the ribbon of paper up and like stuck it in there. And I think my file says 2007. I took a photo shoot and it was just me like walking around the house, the upstairs part mainly, and then even in the attic, dude. And so this was the attic, dude. Okay. July 28th, 1974, the Inquirer. Guardian angel saved me from death when I was 5. Here are boxes of clothes, many looking like probably from the 70s. Pretty rad shoes, honestly, especially that sneaker up there. If I ain't mistaken, dude, this little blue suitcase was sitting up on the rafters of the roof, okay? And my friend took like a broomstick or some shit, some kind of stick, dude, and she knocked it down, okay? And inside of it were these gloves. This looked like it was like from the freaking 50s or the 40s or something, just hella old, dude. Didn't look like no 70s situation going on in the items that were in this suitcase. And again, it's just like, who did that belong to? And why was it left there? Do you have any ideas on that? That's a view of the attic and some of the windows. The attic had these really beautiful windows. This is a photo out of one of the upstairs windows, and you can see the school across the street. I think they call that an elementary school or something. I went to kindergarten there in like 1995. And this is like the big square building, the fire escape thing that was on the side of that building. Here's the attic stairway. Look at that wear on the stairs, dude. So here I am, okay? This is the side door. Off to this side was the door that led into my parents' bedroom with the floor that totally rotted out. On the other side was the bedroom that I lived in for a little while that I think was a screened-in or a walled-in front porch, I think. That was really fun, by the way. And look, like I said, how deep that doorway is. Look at that. That's what I'm saying. The archway doorway in my parents' bedroom was deep like that. The door that led into that room was deep like that. This is deep like that. Like it was like the outside of a building at one point, and they cut this doorway into it or something. Okay, I don't know. Or maybe doorways and walls was just thick as hell back then when this was built. But look at this, dude. We've literally got a picture of the building on the wall inside the front entrance of the building. And like I said, the walls were metal, dude. This was like metal, like siding or something. These were metal walls. This weird shade of like green and gray. Those were metal. I deem the sharing of the information about this building, my experiences and other people's experiences in it, and all of that kind of stuff, I deem that information and those details more important than me crafting a story. I have 16 years worth of experience to tell you about this place. At the least, I can just share all that. And I'll have to address this in another session too and get deeper into it. There were caretakers of this building from the beginning, and I think that they may even be pictured with the building, like in front of the building in some of those photos that I've got. We're not fixated on the way it ended. We're fixated on its life, not its death.